Here are 3 different perspectives on Loki.
Alright, okay. My name is Chuku Owuchi, and I'm going to be talking about the themes of Loki. So 2 themes that you will discover while watching Loki is the theme between free will and predestination, right? Do we have free will when it comes to life, or whether that everything is kind of constructed and everything is meant to happen for a reason, and, we're just kind of robots living in this world. This is a very interesting thing for Loki because, Loki's character is all about chaos. So when you realize that there's kind of order behind this chaos, it's kind of a contradiction. And this is a very interesting concept for this character because we kind of see this with the TVA as if whether or not, is it right for them to be controlling people's lives or people should have their own lives. So they do bring that as well, which creates a very, again, paradoxical thing with Loki and challenges the character, which makes the story more compelling. Next theme that is also very interesting with Loki is this idea of self-love and self-trust, which we kind of see with Loki in the different versions with himself. They metaphorically show that with him, kissing himself, it's him learning to love himself because all of his insecurities come from the lack of self-love. Now, there's also with the paradox with self-trust kind of comes with Kang. Kang, the reason why he created the TVA in the first place was because he did not trust himself. So he created a system that would stop his selves. And we kind of see that paradox play at the end of Loki, where because his other female version of himself did not trust himself, it kind of breaks down. So therefore, even though Loki had self-love for himself, the other version did not self-trust him. So therefore, it shows basically that when you don't trust yourself, there's going to be chaos coming in.
Beautiful.
As much as these themes are played, and I love how they're being portrayed, there are negatives that I feel. They did bring up the free will and predestination idea, but I kind of felt like although they were kind of talking about these themes, it kind of gets overlooked through the whole plot of the story. So it kind of becomes this thing like, do we have free will? Then the next minute it's kind of like, doesn't matter. We got a plot. We got to fix this other stuff. So that kind of thing kind of ruins the theme aspect of the story. And as far as self-love and trust, although they kind of show with the other Lokis and how Loki wants to show, kindness to them because it's a different version of himself, it would have been cooler if we can see more interactions where we actually get an episode with Loki, with a different Loki that wasn't the one that he had to love him like a girl, but like any other Loki. And they spend more time and he sees different aspects of himself where he's like, do I want to be like that or do I not want to be like that? Again, there was one episode where we did this, but it could have been more deeper if we want to go into these themes. But overall, these are the themes of Loki, and I think these themes make the show a very compelling show.
Nice, very well done.
What's up, guys? It's Scott here, and for my review, I'm primarily going to focus on plot and the logic that follows. So for this video, I will carry the mantle of Lord of Logic. First off, I genuinely loved the episode of this series. It gave us a great performance and chemistry between Loki and Mobius, but every other episode that followed, things got wonkier and wonkier in terms of plot. Wonkier. Let's start off with the biggest offense, the lack of consistency between the explanation of time in the NCU. So the way time seems to work in the TVA and at the edge of time makes no sense at all. For instance, they seem to be able to track where Loki and Sylvie are on the planet that's about to be destroyed, as if the time in the TVA lined up with the time of that world. There was about to be a huge Nexus event, and just because they were staring at each other. That also didn't really make much sense. But either way, back to that point, if that's the case, how is it that when Loki got sent back to the TVA before Kang even died by Sylvie's hand, that he was sent to a different TVA that couldn't have existed yet, if the time seems to line up in that sense? And just because Kang dies, can't the TVA just make sure that the other Kangs never discover how to mess with time in the first place? They just continue doing their job, basically. After all, the TVA seems to be able to operate on its own time without being affected by any alterations in other timelines, so it's just a lot of different contradictions. So does killing Kang only create a branch reality based on the time theory that the Ancient One talked about, or does it somehow replace the TVA in its timeline that Loki came back to? You just can't have it both ways, and to me this is a huge plot hole. The lack of consistency left me kind of unsettled throughout in terms of plot. I can appreciate the acting, music, and cinematography. I thought those things were great, but if you leave me with a sloppy plot that contradicts past established rules, it makes it harder to appreciate the show as a whole.
Sounds good. Hey everybody, this is OC speaking, and I'll be talking about Loki from the perspective of an MCU fan, talking about how it relates to the greater MCU. So, first things first, I think that Loki is for sure the best setup for Phase 4 of the MCU that we've had. This includes the movies since Endgame and the other Disney Plus shows that we've had. We definitely had a great introduction of new characters and the organization of the TVA, as well as Kang the Conqueror, and all of this paints a picture for where we will be going for the future of the MCU. And so that's what I appreciate about this, and it really sets up a potentially larger scale threat than the Infinity Saga that we had, which is a tall order, but if they can do it right, it might be really, really good. Now, aside from those pros, I do have some concerns moving forward. My major concern is how this introduction of multiple timelines, something like the TVA, variants, Nexus events, how all of this will affect other properties moving forward. Does the introduction of multiple timelines remove the stakes that we will have for other heroes? So when we revisit something like the Hawkeye show that will be coming out, it's like, will they still be able to keep us interested, even though in the back of our minds, we're thinking about, hey, I wonder which timeline this is in, if this is even an important timeline, and if what we're seeing is going to have any ramifications depending on how they, resolve that whole thing with multiple timelines that they introduced in Loki. So these are some concerns that I think the MCU has to address, because they're kind of playing this line where they have their large scale stories, their big heroes or anti-heroes with Loki, but then they also have like the more smaller scale for Falcon and the Winter Soldier that doesn't have timeline ramifications, right? So how will the events in Loki and the events in something like Falcon and the Winter Soldier be able to interact without us just completely losing interest? That's my concern moving forward. And then as far as the story, I think that they could have done more with what they had. I think there were a lot of episodes where not much happened to move the story along or move along characters that we've got to know. You have to remember that in this show, this is Loki from right after the first Avengers movie. And they kind of like did that whole progression from Avengers Loki to Endgame Loki in a very short amount of time. And they could have done it in a way that would have made it work, but I don't think they did a good job, because there were a lot of episodes where not much happened. There were a lot of things that didn't really have much consequence even in this show, which is weird. And I think they could have done a better job with that. Other than that, these are my thoughts.
Okay, nice. So now we are going to get together and discuss the points that we just made. First off, does anyone disagree with each other in terms of what all of us just said?
I don't know if I have any strong disagreements. I don't think the time thing bothered me, but I also don't know if I thought about it enough. If I thought about it long enough, maybe if I think about it more, it will bother me. It's one of those things where you introduce time and it's always wonky. Like it's usually never clear cut. And so
that's somewhat true, but like say a movie like Tenet, right? Tenet had an established rule of time that actually made sense, interestingly. All of it together, if you just take that logic that they introduced, makes sense together. The issue that I have is that, we had the ancient ones say like, okay, yeah, here's the time stream, and if you do something, a branch reality will be created, right? That's essentially like a Nexus event, right? So when something like that happens, like killing Kang, for instance, it just doesn't make sense that time would like somehow flip on itself and like all of a sudden there's a whole bunch of Kangs now, and like everything that has been done so far by the normal TVA that we followed is just like reversed or something, right? Hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully they're just showing us Loki in a different TVA.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
I'm sure that's what it is. I think he's just I think that there's just multiple TVAs now.
Yeah,
and he's in a different TVA.
But even then, like he got sent back before Kang got killed. So how was he sent back to a different TVA? You know what I mean?
I don't think it matters, like, because the time doesn't work like that. Since that King dies eventually, I guess it's weird.
Exactly.
Like,
see, it's a contradiction.
That King dies, it's not necessarily a contradiction, but since that King dies, that means that he always died, right?
Exactly. So, no. No, you can only have it one or the other way. Right now, you're mixing the two. If he dies, right? If he were to eventually die, there will always be multiple TVAs.
Yes.
Yeah, but there wasn't. There was only one TVA at some point in time.
Right.
So there you go. You have that like logical contradiction. You just, it has to be one or the other. It's either TVA is somehow connected to like some weird time stream where like when events happen in different realities, like, you know, it follows it, or if he eventually dies, then there will always be like multiple TVAs.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird. It is, but
so that's my main issue with that. I mean, like, let us know in the comments if you guys have any like grand explanations for how it all works together, but to me, I just can't see it. The more I think about it, the more it doesn't make sense, basically. I feel like that's a major reason I actually didn't like the show as much. I just I loved the themes that you mentioned, Chuku. Like when it comes to Loki and self-love, all of that is great, but like for me, the execution just wasn't quite strong enough for it to like be felt.
I mean,
because I didn't really believe Sylvie when she didn't like trust Loki. Like I feel like there wasn't a good reason for her not to trust him. She just kind of just didn't trust him.
I agree with that. I feel like from Loki's standpoint, I feel like that was where it came to me believable in terms of like the self-love and maybe then self-trust aspect, and then also the consequences with King, where it's like, you know, he basically created the TVA just so that they don't come in and cause chaos. So when it comes to that aspect, but I agree, like, as far as story narrative aspect, one big problem I also had was that I feel like Loki was too much of what I considered a passive character, where it's like the plot, it was not like he actively moved the plot. It's almost like the plot was moving and he's just kind of stuck on like a roller coaster, as opposed to him actually taking the actions and causing the things to happen. So he seemed too much of a passive character, and almost seemed like the female version was even more of a main character to the story.
Yeah, but even then, like, I feel like her backstory wasn't strong enough. We didn't get enough from her. She felt kind of flat for me at the end.
Yeah, I agree. It was kind of a generic motivation of like, these people attack my people, I want to get revenge, let's get revenge. That was basically her character in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's like she didn't listen to any of the explanation that Kang gave.
Yeah, literally.
Like, I still want to kill you. Like, okay, why don't you guys talk it out like Loki is trying to tell you?
Yeah,
like, literally, he's not even saying let's do this. He's saying let's talk this out. And I'm like, oh my god, like seriously, what is wrong with you? Like, did you just lose your mind or something? Like, I'm the Lord of Logic right now, and I don't understand you at all. It's just, give me a reason. Just give me a reason, you know?
Yeah, going back to the rules, it's interesting that Kang was able to know what they're going to do until the point where it comes down to his assassination, if you will. So that's like weird how they would know that. And I mean, my theory at first was just, okay, maybe because they weren't, you know, outside of time. So maybe because within time rules, he can know that. But at the same time, it's like, how would he know their predictions and steps? It's like, see, that's another thing that just doesn't make sense to me. It's like, how would he predict that they're gonna do these things in the realm of time, but then when they're there, he can't.
That was another one that I was thinking of. Thanks for helping me out.
That kind of brought out. Now you bring it up. Yeah,
because I did mention in my spiel that the edge of time makes no sense. Like, physically and physics-wise, it makes no sense. But also in the show, it makes no sense because, like, they're just making stuff up, and they need to like have rules for it, at least somewhat explained.
Yeah, and that's the hard part when you're dealing with these types of subjects, going back to time travel and all these types of themes. It's like the minute you present them out there in a story, they need to have clear rules, because if they're not clear rules, then it's hard for us to believe in it. It's just kind of, you almost feel like you're just using it for the sake of it versus like actually having some deeper surface of, you know. So yeah, that's another thing.
But I think we've exhausted the logic aspect of things. I really appreciate the themes that you mentioned though. Like, I don't think I would have noticed the whole like self-love thing and like the self-fear thing if you didn't point it out.
Yeah, that's definitely something that stood out to me. And when it comes to television itself, because television at the end of the day, it's about our characters trying to be something that they're not, you know. They're trying to get out of what they are, and so it's always the philosophical challenge, like, could someone from a past be something new, right? So at the end of the day, those core principles in a TV to me is like what stands out the most. But obviously other stuff matter, right? I mean, I do think overall, if you do have a good believable character development, whatnot, stuff like certain logic stuff with the plot could be forgivable. But I don't think Loki, despite that I love it, I still don't think that it did the best job to undermine the other aspects that you guys bring up. So
I will say, from the theme perspective, I was really excited. I was really excited for the discussion of like chaos versus order, free will, and determinism. But I do feel like they kind of dropped the ball on it. Like there was a conversation in, maybe it was like episode 2 or something, with him and Mobius, where they were talking about free will versus predestination and all that stuff. The salad discussion, I think it was. But they basically set us up for like this cool exploration into those themes. But then by the end of it, it was like, oh yeah, they're trying to control us, and they're evil because they're trying to control us. And it was kind of just like, I mean, I feel like we could have had a more what's the word I'm looking for? Nuanced discussion. We could have had a more complex discussion about these themes, as opposed to just they're just giving it's just this bad guy at the top who's controlling TVA, who's lying to everybody, who's manipulating everybody, and we need to fight against him for free will. It kind of ended up just being, easy. I feel like they took the easy way out by making the whole TVA like an evil organization. It made it easy.
Yeah, you just brought up another logic aspect. Like, so when you said he was manipulating the TVA or hiding things from them, I really don't see why. Like, why not just like straight up tell them?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess he said that he explains it that he's done this like 1,000 times, and this is the only way that works, right? As far as like keeping it, and maybe that has something to do with why he chose like 3 timekeepers as like the figurehead. I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, like, his explanation seems to work pretty well. Like, I'd believe him, and then we just like make sure he doesn't go wild. It seems like a clear cut. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see. I suppose Loki got sent back to a version where he is just like the figurehead of the TVA instead of creating those other timekeepers. So maybe this is one of those versions that maybe we'll see why it doesn't work this way. Yeah, and it's weird. I don't know if Loki's like a new. Like, that's one of those things, and maybe this is a logic thing as well. Is like, okay, so is everything that this Loki variant is doing, is this all like stuff that has already happened? Is this all like, or is he like an actual new introduction into this whole Kang thing that he said that he's done this thousands of times, he's lived thousands of lifetimes? Is this Loki situation a new situation? Because like, and this is why
it has to be, right?
I mean, I suppose it has to be, but this goes back to my concern of like, does this just remove stakes? Like, if this has happened thousands of times, and if Loki's been there before, like, what are we doing at this point? Like, why are we here? What is the resolution?
It's definitely new because Kang mentioned how like, oh, he can't see past this point. So I'm pretty sure that it means, it's new.
Hopefully. Yeah. Okay. I have no other pertinent thoughts. I didn't disagree with anybody, what anybody said. I think I agree mostly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to like what's coming out next for the MCU in general, but I just really hope that season 2 of Loki like can answer a lot of these logic questions that I have, and at least give a satisfying answer, even if there's like slight contradictions. Like, at least make it more cohesive. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I don't know if they will. I think for whatever reason they made a lot of weird choices. I mentioned earlier about how they wasted our time with a couple of the episodes. They had us on that apocalypse planet for an entire episode and nothing really happened. They had us, and like the multiple Lokis was cool, but they didn't do anything. They didn't do anything.
Yeah, that goes back to the themes. Although I will say the apocalypse planet goes back to the idea of, self-love kind of thing, where he wants to love himself. But I agree, there could have been a way they can play it off that goes with the plot. I don't think it's like you could choose one or the other. I think if anything, good storytelling, plot is character is plot. They should be connected. They shouldn't be too opposite of each other. So
I mean, that's a I feel like that's a huge issue for a lot of TV shows, is that they end up doing a lot of like, I suppose, filler type episodes where it has nothing to do with like the main plot, but they do show some character growth in that.
Yeah.
But ideally, it's like you're still in the main plot, but you also show character growth.
Yeah.
And
So-
the other MCU Disney Plus shows have not done that. But for whatever reason, this show with only 6 episodes gave us like a ton of filler. So I don't know why they
Yeah.
did that, but you know.
Well, when it comes to like a plot that involves time, I guess it's just like, oh, let's waste it. I'm just kidding, I don't know.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I don't
that's
know.
what
It's tough because I did feel like overall, I guess it's because, again, goes back to the themes, because I'm the theme person. But overall, I feel like I enjoyed Loki a little bit more than the other shows, although I do agree a lot of the problems of Loki weren't on at least the other MCU shows. Like I still feel like if we were talking about, consistency and stuff, I do think like Falcon and Winter Soldier is a better show when it comes to that, or even WandaVision, although the way her character came at the end was a little bit weird. But I don't know if it's just the themes or the aesthetic of Loki, but I enjoyed that aesthetic, or at least I enjoyed the journey of watching Loki more than I did with the other shows. So for me, at least.
Yeah.
So
It's a tough one, I feel, because like when I think of Captain Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and then I compare it to Loki, I'm like, in some ways it's just much more cohesive as a story for Captain Falcon, but
yeah.
Loki's journey and Loki as a character just has way more interest to me.
Yeah.
And the consequences of the show are more like, they affect the MCU as a whole more versus the other shows, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely.
We'll see if it affects it for good or for bad.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to like rank them at the moment. I have to like sit with it for a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, overall, I thought it was enjoyable to watch. I just thought it could have been better.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Looks like those are our thoughts. And let us know what you thought in terms of, you can take it from any perspective. You can talk about either theme, logic, or just as an MCU fan, what you thought of the show overall. And let us know also if you thought this one was the best, or the ranking out of the 3 so far. And we'll catch you in the next video.
Peace.
Peace.